He was like, working in a place like this suits a poor family-less guy like you, sneered my classmate. Bull Walker as he saw me working at the convenience store.
But the next moment, the sound of a slap echoed through the quiet store.
Say, apologize to him right now.
It was his father who had been bullying me, showing anger to his son. Knowing the reason why, I started to tear up. My name is Michael Edwards. Ever since I lost my parents in an accident when I was a child, and since I have no relatives, I've had to switch schools multiple times over the years. I was bounced around from relative to relative. At each relative's house, I was treated kindly at first, but it seems that raising someone else's child is always challenging.
When it was time to move to the next house, they would send me off happily saying, take care. I was never told you're always welcome back.
Through these many moves, I learned how to live without causing trouble for others. In junior high 8th grade, for some reason, I ended up living with a couple in their 50s. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. Both Mr. and Mrs. Wilson are qualified lawyers, and were busy working as lawyers until a few years ago. Now they're both retired and living peacefully. He didn't know why they took me in, as I was not a relative or anything. Regardless of the reason, I wanted to stay here forever. Because this town is where I lived with my parents until they died in the accident. Walking down the street, warm memories come flooding back. I wonder how long I'll be allowed to stay with the Wilsons. Reflecting on my past, I vow to live quietly and cause as little trouble as possible until the time comes to leave. Contrary to my thoughts, the Wilsons were very kind and treated me like a real family.
Michael, let's go fishing together.
Michael, what do you want for dinner tonight?
I hadn't had such conversations since my parents passed away. I remembered that a real family was something this warm, and so I gradually opened up to Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. In 9th grade, Mr. Wilson asked about my future plans.
After I graduate from middle school, I plan to work. I plan to work. Please let me stay here a little longer until I can stand on my own 2 feet.
I didn't hesitate to show my intent to get a job.
We consider you, Michael, as part of our real family. You can always stay here, and you don't have to worry about money. Take the time seriously to think about your future.
The kindness of Mr. Wilson was overflowing. It was a very heartwarming statement, but I, who had never thought about the future before, was left puzzled. All I had been thinking about was how to become independent as quickly as possible, so as not to burden others. I didn't have a clear idea about what I wanted to do or what I liked. Seeing my struggle and envisioning my future, Mr. Wilson said with a smile,
That you need, Michael, it's time to face yourself. If you want to go to high school, do so. If you want to work, then get a part-time job.
Mr. and Mrs. Wilson always considered me, helped pave the way for my future by letting me go to high school. Upon entering high school, I ran into a guy named Bill. Bill was a classmate from elementary school. We were not in the same class back then, so we hardly ever spoke. However, once we ended up in the same class in high school, This Bill began to make sarcastic remarks and bully me. Bill belonged to a popular group and gradually began to involve others in his antics against me. Being an orphan, I have been subjected to this sort of harassment at school for a long time, so I knew better than to engage with him. He would get bored and give up eventually. I deciding to ignore him. I found Bill constantly trying to mess with me. My stress was piling up. Thus, my high school life, far from smooth, had begun about a month after starting high school. Mr. Wilson asked me about my school life. "It's fun," thanks Mr. Wilson. "Thank you for letting me go to high school." I'm determined never to tell them about Bill's harassment because I don't want to worry Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. I had decided that once I became a high school student, I would take advantage of the time that Mr. and Mrs. Wilson had given me to try various things. I wanted to discover my own potential and to repay Mr. and Mrs. Wilson in some way. I thought of getting a part-time job at a convenience store. The reason was that I thought I should earn at least my pocket money myself, and I thought I could meet various people at a convenience store. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were genuinely pleased for this. I had lived a reserved life, always wary of how others would react, so I was worried if I could handle customer service. But surprisingly, I was able to handle it smoothly. Easy. As for my coworkers, there were college students, housewives, and a 65-year-old man. Listening to their various stories, I realized that what I had experienced so far was just a tiny fraction of life. They all said in unison, once you enter society, most people have to live a constrained life because of their company or societal expectations. So, do whatever you like while you can. Advice from those more experienced in life carries weight. I believe I've certainly grown a lot since I started my part-time job. At one point, a high school girl named Jenna became a new member of our coworkers. Jenna was a quiet girl, but we quickly became friends because we were the same age, lived close by, and had the same way home. One of the things I enjoyed was talking with Jenna on the way home from work. I was usually the one talking, but Jenna was a good listener and occasionally made sharp retorts. It was a lot of fun being with her. I used to live here. I stopped and pointed to a place that is now vacant.
They really...
Jenna looked surprised, her face serious. I told her about how my parents had died in a car accident when I was in the first grade, how I had transferred schools over and over again, and how I was now living in this town again, taken in by a famed couple. Anna thought for a while before looking straight into my eyes and saying, "I'm glad you came back to this town." Michael. I didn't think too deeply about the meaning of her words. I was just happy. One day during a break, Bill came up to the front of my desk. "Your parents died in an accident, didn't they?" "They probably ignored a traffic signal or something. People who can't follow rules deserve to die. And now you're freeloading, right? You've been passed around by your relatives, and then you're taken in by people who aren't even relatives. That's definitely suspicious. They're probably going to make you do something bad, right?" Man, your life is a mess. Bill said this with a smirk loudly enough that everyone could hear. And I had ignored him when he bothered me before, but this time I couldn't. I was angry when he spoke ill of my parents and the couple. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. Don't talk nonsense when you don't know anything. Before I knew it, I was grabbing Bill. My friend stopped me and I came back to myself, shaking my fist and taking deep breaths. The classroom was silent. Bill, surprised by my first retaliation. What are you doing? It's the truth. Bill spat that out and returned to his seat. I managed to suppress my anger, grabbed my bag, and left the classroom. It's too early to go home. I sat down on the riverbank, staring blankly at the river. At the chirping of birds, the flowing water, the sound of grass rubbing against the wind. Ordinary life was passing right before my eyes. I used to take walks here with my mom and dad. Memories of the past resurfaced. The memories from when my parents were alive are only of happy times. Watching bugs together, setting off fireworks, making birthday cakes. I wonder what kind of person I would have become if my parents were alive. I tried to think about it, but I stopped right away. Wait. How many hours have I been sitting here? It's the sun that was directly above me was now shining on me from the right. I guess it's time to go home.
Though I had completely regained my composure, we turned to the house where Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were waiting. I'm home. Welcome back. Can we talk for a moment?
Following Mrs. Wilson in the living room, I saw Mr. Wilson sitting on the sofa.
Welcome back. Michael, we got a call from your teacher before noon saying you had disappeared without permission. What happened?
I'm sorry for skipping school. I was unsure if I should talk about Bill.
Mr. Wilson and Mrs. Wilson were looking at me with very worried expressions. I couldn't lie to these two. That's what I thought.
Since I started high school, I'd been bullied by a guy named Bill who was my classmate in elementary school.
I told them everything that had happened so far and what happened today.
So that's what's been going on. You're strong. Michael, thank you for telling us. Don't hold back anymore.
Michael, feel free to talk about anything, whether it's fun or hard. We're practically family after all.
After hearing my story to the end, they said this and comforted me. Since that fight, Bill has been less involved with me. However, one day after work, when I was leaving the convenience store with Jenna as usual, I was called out. The man I never wanted to see here. The bang.
Pieces working like this suits a poor guy like you who doesn't have a family.
He started to make sarcastic comments to me in front of Jenna. I silently glared back at Bill. Suddenly, there was a yell. "What are you doing?" I bell. Bill was smacked hard on the back of the head by a furious man. Startled, first Bill spun around.
Bad.
It turned out the man was Bill's father. While Bill was too shocked to say anything, his father came up to me and apologized.
I got a call from Mr. Wilson recently. He told me that my son, Gil, has been bullying you. Michael, I can't believe he's doing such terrible things. I'm truly sorry.
The story didn't end there.
Actually, we owe a lot to Mr. Wilson. We run a liquor store, and when Bill was in first grade, I canned a traffic accident while returning from a delivery. 2 people died in that accident. The 2 people who died were your parents, Michael.
The Bill, standing next to his father, spat out the words that the sudden revelation of this truth left my head spinning. Bill's father looked down for a moment, then raised his face and continued. Your parents? Michael ran into the street against a red light to save a small child. Etienne, I wasn't speeding, but I couldn't avoid them because of the sudden event. I'm truly sorry. Bill's father seemed to be suffering greatly, and I could see his arms trembling with tension. People around me suspected I was speeding.
I was already in shock from causing the accident, and being doubted made me physically and mentally devastated. First list, the people who helped me out at the time were Mr. and Mrs. Wilson.
Here's a summary of the rest of the story. In this accident, Bill's father asked Mr. Wilson for legal assistance. Apparently, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson were seniors from Bill's father's college club and had known him well for a long time. They listened to his story with great empathy, gathered evidence piece by piece that this accident was unavoidable, and dealt with it. Thanks to them clearing up the misunderstanding, he was able to live with his family and continue the liquor store. He was deeply grateful to Mr. and Mrs. Wilson. However, after the accident, false rumors spread and the family couldn't go outside for a while. Customers stopped coming to the store, and Bill was bullied at school. Bill started talking about these things like a dam bursting.
You've been able to return to a normal life because Mr. Wilson helped you, haven't you? Right?
Bill's father chastised Bill, but why did they ignore the signal? Dad, who was obeying the rules, was suspected, and I was in pain. I was not guilty.
It seemed like Bill was venting the frustration he had felt long ago. Bill's father seemed to be in pain, realizing that he had put even a young Bill through a hard time and knowing that he had been thinking about his welfare.
Bill, I'm sorry. You were young and I thought you had long forgotten about the accident. Let's go home and talk about, this slowly. Then, with a deep bow to me, he put his hand on Bill's back and the 2 of them slowly went home.
Echna, who had been listening to the whole thing, called out to me from behind. But Jenna's sudden confession. I was lost for words. According to Jenna, on the day of the accident, she, who is then a first grader, was out walking her pet dog. But when she stopped at a crosswalk, her dog suddenly bolted onto the road, startled by a bird that had taken flight. Jenna, having let go of the leash, desperately chased after her dog, and she too ended up on the road. Then a loud horn blared, and a truck came from Jenna's right. But when Jenna came to, a man and a woman were lying next to her. Apparently, they were my parents. And from an eyewitness, Jenna learned that the 2 had run out after Jenna and her dog, trying to shield them. And later, she learned that the 2 who had saved her had died. Jenna's parents did go to apologize, but Jenna, shocked by the accident, shut herself in for a while. By the time Jenna was finally able to go out again, she, as the bereaved, was taken in by relatives, and no one was living in the Edwards residence. In the end, Jenna had been living with the frustration of not being able to go out again. Jenna had been living with the frustration of not being able to apologize.
When Michael talked about his parents, I thought maybe, and after hearing that person's story, I was sure. I'm really sorry for the late apology. Thanks to Michael's parents, I'm able to live happily. Thank you very much.
Jenna bowed deeply. When I got home, I told Mr. and Mrs. Wilson everything I had heard today.
I really respect Michael's parents. It's not something anyone can do to risk their lives to protect another person's child. Even well involved in this accident as a lawyer, I've always wanted to at least protect Michael, who was born to such wonderful parents. That's why we decided to take Michael in.
It seems that the Wilsons had always been concerned about me, left all alone. There were times when I thought I was unhappy because my parents left me alone. But because my parents lived honorably until the end, I was able to live with the Wilsons, go to high school, work a part-time job, and meet Jenna, who my parents saved. Its various elements connected in a single line, and I was certain that I could live strongly from now on. But from this day forward, there was no more harassment from Bill. No one would bully me anymore. That the atmosphere in the class became harmonious, and I was able to lead the peaceful high school life I had longed for. When I became a senior in high school, I quit my job at the convenience store to focus on college entrance exams. Having heard stories from the college students I met at my job, I decided to go to college. The faculty I want to join is the law department. In the future, I want to become a lawyer like Mr. Wilson and help people. And then in March, I successfully passed the university entrance exams. And Jenna goes to the same university. Actually, we've been dating since our sophomore year of high school.
Michael, let's go report our acceptance to the convenience store where you used to work.
Saying so, Jenna started running across the riverbank. I don't know if it's fate, but we met. And knowing the past, we've come to cherish ourselves and live with hope for the future. And I will continue to live with all my might, proud of my parents who risked their lives to help others. Speaking so, I started running across the riverbank where I used to walk with my parents. My name is Kelly, and I am 62 years old. I live alone in an apartment in Irvine. My mother divorced shortly after I was born, so I grew up in a single-mother family. Fortunately, after the divorce, my father provided me with adequate support and cared for me until I entered college. Following that, I joined a reasonably well-known company, and we had an arranged marriage thanks to an introduction from my boss. My son was born soon after, and we were enjoying our days together, but my husband died suddenly because of illness.
But my husband died suddenly because of illness shortly after my son began working. My son's name is Mike. He was an honest child who cared for me as a child, but his personality began to change when he entered college. His selfishness worsened after my husband died. He would say things like, "I'm on my own now, so leave me alone." After I'd say he's become more dependable, but I'm wondering if it's because I'm getting older that I'm feeling a little lonely. My son is marrying the daughter of one of his clients' presidents who met through a business acquaintance. Besides, her family seems to be a rich family, and they look down on my son, who comes from a single mother family at first.
But her father said talking about family background nowadays is an anachronism. That is fine if you both agree.
When I first visited her parents' home for the wedding ceremony, I was standing by the size of magnificence. I then gave my son a house I was living in, and moved into an apartment that I purchased with my husband's inheritance. Aside, it isn't Irvine, but I like the peace and quiet of the suburbs. My son's wife had the temperament of a wealthy daughter from an old rich family. She seemed to look down on me, a divorced woman living in a small Irvine apartment. She seemed to think I was a poor person on a pension.
I don't mean to be rude to you, but may I ask you a question?
Yes, what is it? Yeah.
I'm afraid you have financial problems.
Thank you for your concern, but I've been able to make a decent living.
My family is well known, and my father is the president of a well-known furniture manufacturer. He's the CEO. Do you get what I'm saying?
She boasted about her family as if it was normal to do so.
So, do you believe you will be able to obtain financial assistance?
What do you mean?
Let me tell you frankly, I don't want our money going toward your living expenses.
She believes I am a poor woman who will be a burden on her family.
Oh.
Perhaps not now, but you will, won't you?
I was wondering what kind of education she got.
Oh well, thank you very much for your generosity, but you don't have to worry about that. Keep that in mind.
She then walked away from me.
Her reaction was unusual, and I could tell how bad her personality is.
Then sometime later, my son and his wife visited me. He said, as my appears to powers, I'd made a lot of homemade dishes to keep them entertained since my son returned after a while. Plus, my mother was from the Anaheim region, so I made light flavored dishes. I made a vegetable stew and boiled some fish.
She is from the Palm Springs region, so she thought they were too bland and didn't taste good.
It's a pretty bad dish. Is there more meat?
Hi, sorry. I grew up near the sea, so I know how to cook fish, but not meat.
You had a very poor diet, didn't you?
But I wasn't impoverished.
I'm not sure how you define poor, but we weren't poor. Then my son, who was standing nearby, unusually took my side.
But it looks poor because there are only vegetables and fish. This vegetable soup was made from instant tofu and dried seaweed.
Her arrogance was unending. I don't make ready-made meals. I make it by myself. I was so enraged that I retorted angrily.
But Mom, her family's meat dishes are excellent. Palm Springs has many brands of elite beef, and I'm now a big fan of it.
I didn't understand what my son was thinking. He reversed his earlier opinion and followed up with his own wife.
Her family, by the way, is living in a well-known area in Palm Springs for its elite beef.
Please cut the elite local beef. It's easy to cut with chopsticks and melts in your mouth. Ah, I apologize. You usually eat the best one. It's quite expensive, so it's not for you.
She giggled as she put her hand over her mouth. I twirled, I couldn't help but laugh at her. and Saturday one day when I had almost forgotten about such things. I was invited to Anna's parents' home. Because it was the end of summer and there were few tourists, I was asked if I wanted to come. So yeah, it was my son's idea this time. I accepted the invitation because I had no plans and had not had the opportunity to visit Palm Springs.
Despite the fact that it was an invitation, I brought some sweets from a long-established Irvine shop as a gift.
Don't worry about it. I get tired of eating so much, but since I'm here, I'll receive it.
Anna's sarcasm irritated me, but this is my in-laws' home. Except for me, everyone was an enemy. My in-laws' house was as beautiful as ever. They had renovated the garden and created a pond in which the carp swam gracefully.
The carp cost approximately $10 million. They're few in number, but I chose quality over quantity. I canceled them.
His wife looked overjoyed. I was reminded of how much she shows off things. My son and his wife invited me to a luxury hot spring hotel nearby. I enjoyed their magnificent hot spring facilities, as well as the pride and joy of fine Kobe beef.
I think I would have enjoyed it even more if there were none of her, usual sarcastic comments.
I think I would have enjoyed it even more if there were none of her usual sarcastic comments. Then there was the time when we went to my in-laws' house to say thank you and goodbye, and we were all drinking tea together.
Thank you very much for your assistance. I was able to enjoy the hot spring and delicious food because of you. My thank you speech changed into a terrible situation.
There's no need to thank me for that.
His wife seemed to be preparing for a battle. My son has been blessed with a wonderful family, and as his mother. Your stars, I am grateful. Thank you very much. I said something that I had no intention of saying.
My main concern is for you. I was concerned when I saw your house. Do you live with your pension?
That should be enough for a normal life.
But won't it eventually run out and force you to come to my parents' house for assistance? I'd appreciate it if you could refrain.
I've never considered it.
No, it could happen anytime soon, could it? Protections? I better get it figured out while I still could.
She got into the main talk. Can you sort this out? What do you mean?
I'm not even a monster. I invited you here to have one last good time with your son. Did you like it?
Yes, it was enjoyable.
That makes me happy. So I'm going to cut off our relationship with you once and for all.
Hi, Roseanne. What do you mean?
We would be greatly inconvenienced if you became a beggar, so we would prefer that you become a stranger.
Bear? Stranger? I repeated her words because I didn't understand what she meant.
That's why I'm asking you to abandon us now. Do you get what I'm saying?
I was enraged by her condescending attitude, but I managed to keep it under control. I realized what you meant. If you wish that, I will do so. It was relieved by my understanding response.
Don't worry. I've already prepared the bus fare for your return trip. Or by then.
She continued sarcastically until the end.
How buddy? I just want to thank you for what you did this time. Thank you a lot. I returned to Irvine after leaving those dismissive words.
Sonny, I was furious at what my son and his wife had done to me, but I didn't take any action. Then, in an attempt to de-stress, I traveled to Beverly Hills, a city I adore.
I've stopped sending money to my son for good since then. I had been giving him some of the dividends from my father's stock as pocket money, but I had no choice but to stop when he told me he was going to distance himself from me.
My son begged me to keep giving him money, but I refused, saying that I would no longer support him because we broke off our relationship. Apparently, he doesn't inform his wife that I have sent him money. Miss Anna was holding his wallet, and apparently he was spending money from me on anime merchandise. That when they got married, Miss Anna threw all of his prized possessions away, and then he gradually began collecting them again. Then I heard that Anna's father had a stroke. Fortunately, he survived, but due to his stroke, he was unable to continue his work. My son and his wife have assumed the roles of family governor and president. My daughter-in-law's family is quite wealthy, but the company's management was aggressive and unpopular. Since my son and his wife took over the company's management has been plagued. Most clients were dissatisfied with the way the company has been run and have stopped doing business with them. I would normally have gone to see him because he was my daughter-in-law's father, but because I had been cut off from them, I did not. Miss Anna has a similar personality to her father, so she will most likely conduct herself in the same way. However, she does not appear to have much business acumen, in my opinion. I was concerned about her future because she is selfish and looks down on others. The company's sales have fallen as expected, and the new business she started has failed to materialize, leaving them with nothing but more debt. Sales of high-end furniture, the company's mainstay, remained slow, and it was clear that the company as a whole would lose money in the future. I was concerned, but I decided to wait and see what happened. The company then conducted a major reorganization in which the entire board of directors was replaced. The power my son, who became the new president, called for the current main business to be downsized and new divisions to be established. I'm not sure about the specifics, but it seems that the decision was made by Anna, who is the company's largest shareholder. My son is the representative director, but he seems to have gone unnoticed. It was definitely her way of doing things. However, this was a big failure. Sales in the main business operations plummeted, and the new division performed far below expectations. The stock price dropped significantly as the company's performance deteriorated, and the company's survival became doubtful as more and more employees who had given up on the company began to resign. I had been watching the stock price, but it kept falling. Dividends were no longer paid, and the quarterly reports and stock firms' general comments were depressing. The company may be delisted soon.
Once Alpha stock is delisted, it will be impossible to buy and sell shares on the market, and raising funds will be extremely difficult. Banks are unlikely to extend loans, so the only option is for them to liquidate. These are parents own a number of local forests and other properties, but they're not expected to be worth much because they are in a rural area. Still, at the end of the day, they had no choice but to sell them. I can't be bothered because I'm cut off from them. After I carried on with my life in the same way as before, my son and his wife then contacted me several times for some reason, but I ignored them because I didn't need them. And then there was the time when I was on my annual sightseeing tour of Beverly Hills, admiring the autumn leaves. The sandstone, but the mushrooms this year were smaller, possibly due to the weather, but the flavor was richer and the taste was excellent. Soothes my heart when combined with the colorful scenery of the autumn leaves outside. It was outside. I was enjoying Beverly Hills autumn scenery. I received a call from one of the staff members.
There is a visitor here to see you.
Done. I don't have an appointment, and only a few people know I'm in Beverly Hills. What is the visitor's name?
Yes, Smith. Her name is Anna Smith.
Smith. I paused for a moment, but it hit me right away. I consider you. I know her, but we're taking a break from each other for some reason. Please ask her to leave.
She is very eager to see you. She even got down on her knees. How should I deal with this?
Well, there's nothing I can do. Send her to the guest room, please. I'll return once I finish getting ready. I returned to my room, changed into something more appropriate. It's been a long time. I understand your family, and I have been cutting off our relationship. What made you come here? I had no idea you came this far. I greeted her calmly.
It's been a long time. Thank you so much for forgiving me for all the disrespect I've shown you in the past.
What is this, so? I'm not forgiving you. I only came to see you on a whim. Misunderstandings would make it difficult to think.
No, my words were too strong. I apologize.
Wishes her face is flushed from nervousness and my cold attitude.
I've heard that you own this mansion. Can you tell me how you got this?
She should have heard something about my true identity somewhere. It was clear to me that she had come to me because she was desperate for money.
That's none of your business, I said as I smiled and dismissed her.
This is my father's villa. It's like it was given to me by my father. I said after a brief pause. I made the decision to speak clearly.
Oh, who is your father?
John Scott. Oh, he is deceased, but don't you know him?
What? Oh, the previous president of Scott Trading. Does that mean you're the former president's daughter?
This new revelation has made her shocked. Let me explain in detail. I'm his daughter of his ex-wife, and I use my mother's surname. Half-brother is the current president of the company. My mother has already died, and I've been taking some distance myself from the Scott family. Because my personality is not suited to business. I delivered company management to my younger brother. And I wanted to live quietly for the rest of my life, so I received a portion of the company's shares as an advancement from my father and got this house. So
I see.
She seems she understood. Let me tell you about my current financial situation. As an inexperienced stockbroker, I do not buy or sell stocks, but I do receive dividends twice a year. Our dividends are paid to me twice a year, which covers my expenses. To begin with, I don't want to live a fancy life. This house is managed by my brother. He has a maid stationed in the house so I can use her at any time.
Papa.
Why are you here, by the way? I just want to double check that I'm properly abandoned, am I right?
Yes. As you are aware, our family business is struggling, and I was hoping you would be willing to assist us.
She begged desperately. But what's the point of this? I asked with my plain expression.
Actually, as when my father became ill, my husband took over as president, but he was inexperienced. As a relative, I thought it would be better if I took charge, so I assisted him in various ways.
You mean that my son was merely an ornament for you to wield real power? I was at this point, she must have concluded that her bizarre evasions were futile. It shows her explanation was accurate. What happened next?
The product mix change that I had initiated had failed, and we were saddled with massive losses in debt, and I did everything I could to help.
Oh, you're saying you've turned to me.
That's correct.
I'll let us say. Do you want me to assist you with that?
Yes. I'd be delighted to assist.
Do you remember what you told me? You isolate me from your family because I'm a nuisance to you if I beg. What exactly are you saying and doing, else that you said would be a bother if I begged?
Oh, it's for money.
As known as begging in this world,
You are correct.
right. I told you with a smile, I will decline. I don't want you to dismiss me. You've treated me so poorly, and now you want me to assist you.
I apologize. I'm sorry, but I need...
She bends her knees and rubs her chin against the floor. I didn't pay attention to her and said, I am not a person who is capable of giving alms to a beggar. Please leave.
Please. The bank will no longer lend to me, and I've nowhere to rely.
She kept getting down her knees, and she didn't care that the hem of her dress was a mess. Sincerely wish you the best. Sir is leaving. Send her to the entrance. And for the last time, sprinkle some salt on them. I told her in my maid, watching the four maids drag her out of the room, standing her up and holding her from both sides or she remain on her knees. I went back to my room, returned my gaze to the blazing autumn leaves, and softly murmured, I just want to live in peace. Later, I knew that her company had gone bankrupt. She gave up her land and house to settle down, and with the little money she had left, she rented a small rented house, and they spent days working part-time. I'm still living in apartment in Irvine. When my son married and moved out, he bought a cat for me because he knew I'd be lonely. He is Dime, a Maine Coon. He is a long-haired cat, so he is difficult to care for, but he enjoys being brushed and is always quiet. Seeing his comfortable face makes me happy as well. I had to go to Beverly Hills. Well, I don't go in the winter. We always go in the fall. Station's too hot for you in the summer. Char, he began biting my hand sweetly while I was petting him. Hey! He licks the spot of my hand where he bit me as if he apologized. You're so cute. By the time I had already won my heart. Then I returned to Beverly Hills. Outside it was snowing.
Outside, it was snowing. I'm in my arms, staring out the window with me. You were only the size of my palm when you first arrived at my house. I thought he was quiet, but Deem had fallen asleep before I noticed. It's true what they say about a sleeping child growing up. But if you grow any larger, I won't be able to hold you. I looked out once more, brushing the tip of Dime's nose as he slept. It had been a quiet, snowy night. I was nodding off as well. I was wondering if there would be a lovely snowy landscape tomorrow morning. I went to bed thinking about this. Dime is also sleeping next to me. As I closed my eyes, I told myself that I was going to have a good dream. I closed my eyes and thought, Mom is unconscious. The phone call from my brother during work was shocking. Our mother, who lives alone, resides near my brother's place. Isn't being a worrier, my brother checks on her whenever he has time. Today, after finishing work, he stopped by our childhood home. He had called her before heading over, and she said she would prepare food for him. Yet there was no response at the intercom, so he thought something was wrong and unlocked the door. He found our mother collapsed in the kitchen and quickly called an ambulance. My name is Susan. I'm 32 years old and work as a staff at an electronics store. Our father passed away from an illness about 5 years ago, leaving our mother living alone in our childhood home. I've been living alone because I often work overtime and it's more convenient to be close to work. It's only about a 10-minute train ride to our childhood home, so I visit about once a month. Just recently, I saw our mother in good health at home. Despite that, I rushed to the hospital after hearing she had suddenly been taken there by ambulance. At the hospital, I met up with my brother, and when we entered our mother's room, the doctor soon came in and told us she had passed away. The cause was a heart attack. I was stunned, unable to accept the reality, but I couldn't dwell on my sadness. Unlike our father's illness-related death, I'd never even considered the sudden loss of our mother, so there were many things to do for the funeral. By the time we finished the funeral, both my brother and I were exhausted. After that, we decided to split up and handle various procedures. First, we went to our childhood home to sort through our mother's belongings. As my brother and I were heading there, I spotted a cell phone store. Come to think of it, we need to cancel Mom's cell phone plan, right? I'll ask what we need to do. I could have called and asked later, but since it was on our way back, we decided to stop. I could have called and asked later, but since it was on our way back, we decided to stop by. The cell phone store was busy when we arrived. Upon second thought, it was peak season. The store had a big promotion for student discounts, and none of the staff paid any attention to us. Did they think we had no business there because we weren't students? Slightly annoyed, my brother and I entered the store. Since during Oscars, I was approached by a staff who looked like an information staff, so I said, I'd like to ask you about cancellation.
The female staff made a blatantly disgusted face.
You want to cancel? Please wait a moment.
She seemed a bit younger than me, but her attitude was quite rude. I just wanted to ask about the required documents, but she was busy, so it couldn't be helped. My brother and I waited, and I noticed the same female staff member treating a parent and student with a bow and a smile. Sure, cancellations might not generate revenue, but we were long-time customers, so at least they could treat us fairly. My brother remarked that it was busy and started looking up information about bank cancellations on his smartphone. The other staff members were also busy, and the guide blatantly ignored us. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to speak to the female staff member again.
My mother passed away, so we want to cancel her plan. If you could just tell us the required documents, we'll gather them and come back. How soon can you help us with that?
Though I was upset. I'm a working adult too. I tried to convey my message as politely and concisely as possible.
The person themselves should come for the cancellation. Just bring a driver's license.
I wanted to say, were you even listening? But I held back.
So, my mother has passed away, and we want to cancel on her behalf. As I said that, the female staff furrowed her brow.
As I said, we can't cancel it without the person themselves.
Frustrated, I snapped. I told you she's deceased.
Then the female staff laughed and said, well then bring her bones. But she made a suing gesture.
There was no point in staying here any longer. My brother seemed upset as well. I glared at her and left the store with my brother. I thought about talking back, but we were near our family home, and I didn't want to cause a scene in front of the neighbors, so I held back for now. A few days later, we went to the cell phone shop again. We didn't want to be charged for another month, so we wanted to cancel as soon as possible. Since I work at an electronics store, I asked a colleague in the mobile department to look into it and gather the necessary documents. Our electronics store couldn't handle the cancellation process, but if we take a death certificate to the shop, they would accept it. I sometimes see customers complaining about not being able to cancel at our store, and I finally understood how they felt. I never thought about the differences between mobile shops before. We were still in the process of cleaning up our family home, so I met up with my brother there, and we headed straight to the cell phone shop. We considered going to another shop, but it wasn't our fault, so why should we have to accommodate them? Plus, other shops were far away. We entered the shop, hoping that the female staff from before wouldn't be there. However, she was the one greeting customers again. She seemed to have forgotten about us, so when I said, we were here before, and our mother passed away, so we came to cancel her cell phone, the female staff looked shocked as she looked at my face. I brought the necessary documents, so please proceed. As I said that, she put her hand on the earpiece she was wearing. By the way, the earpiece is a type of small radio, which I also wear at work. She reluctantly led us to a table. She probably received instructions from her supervisor to do so. I wanted someone else to handle it, but we just want to get this over with and leave. As soon as I thought that, she sat down with a mocking smile. I told you last time, right? We can't cancel without the person themselves. So where's your mother? Is she just invisible to me or something? What's with that attitude? Just before I snapped, my brother held me back. I didn't understand why, but my brother calmly said, we brought the person themselves, and placed a bag on the table. The female staff looked into the bag with a mocking expression. My brother silently opened the bag. Inside was an urn. The female staff didn't seem to know what it was, so she leaned in with a puzzled expression. My brother opened the urn's lid and said, "These are her bones?"
The next moment, the female staff member said, "Well," and fell from the high chair she was sitting on.
An incredibly loud noise occurred, and another male staff rushed over. The male staff seemed flustered, but the female staff's face turned pale and she didn't speak. "Itchin," I said to the female staff. "Could you stop making that face as if you've seen a ghost? Is this your first time seeing cremated remains? But you're the one who told me to bring them, right?" Then the male staff began to bow his head. Apparently, he was the store manager. Comic told the manager what I had been told earlier. He bowed his head again. As I spoke to the manager, the store became crowded. I told the manager, "Please go and attend to other customers. It's just a contract cancellation and it will be over quickly if this person takes care of it." Although the manager seemed confused, he was called on his walkie-talkie and in a strict tone told the female staff to do her job properly before going to attend to other customers. I placed my mother's cell phone next to the opened urn. "So I want to cancel this. So, I want to cancel this."
When I said that, the female staff hurriedly said, "Please put the remains away quickly." But my brother spoke nonchalantly.
"It's okay. I'm not doing anything bad. Besides, you're the one who told me to bring the remains. Plus, my mother will watch over us too."
I couldn't help but laugh at his words.
See, the female staff glared at me and said, "Show me your driver's license."
"Whose? Mine? My mother's?" I placed both my mother's and my driver's licenses on the table. I also lined up the death certificate and the credit card my mother used for automatic withdrawal. The female staff took all of them without saying a word and left the table. I stopped her. "Wait, don't just take them without asking. What are you using them for? You told me to show my driver's license, but you didn't tell me the purpose."
"Oh, it's to confirm customer information."
The female staff muttered and didn't come back. So I said, "Aren't you supposed to do that in front of us? That's what everyone else does, right? Isn't that a compliance violation?" Compliance means abiding by laws and regulations. Simply put, it's showing customers that our company follows laws and social rules. I deal with customers' personal information in my job, so I'm constantly being nagged about compliance. It's even more strict in a cell phone shop that handles a lot of personal information, but this female staff showed no sense of urgency. I was also irritated by that, but she flinched when she heard the word compliance. The saleswoman hastily brought back the personal information she took and brought a terminal where I can view the contract information instead. By the way, my brother, being aware of the surroundings, quickly puts away the urn and gives the female staff a cold look. The female staff seems to be concerned about the customers entering the store while dealing with us, and the conversation is not progressing smoothly.
Then she says, "There will be an annual contract cancellation fee which will be billed next month. However, I checked with the person in charge of cell phones at my workplace that it would be waived."
So I asked, I heard that it would be waived if the contract holder passed away. Is that true? Faint upon hearing this, she starts to look into it in a hurry. I sigh and take out my smartphone. I open the inquiry page on the cell phone company's website and show the official answer to the female staff.
The female staff looks up and says, "Then I won't be charged."
Excuse me? What's with that attitude? I couldn't help but say that, and she glared at me, but I continued. I have no reason to be glared at for your lack of knowledge, and I've noticed you've been looking at other customers since earlier. Isn't that rude? I heard this from the person in charge of cell phones at my workplace as well, that staff sales performance only counts when they acquire new customers. That doesn't mean they should have such an attitude towards other customers.
You may think of me as a complainer, but I'm not. All you need to do is to handle this cancellation process quickly and accurately. I've been thinking this for a while, but your attitude is just terrible.
I just wanted to cancel the contract, but since I couldn't finish and go home, I was irritated and ended up speaking in a strong tone. When I calm down, I feel a little guilty. But then, I was completely astonished by the female staff's next attitude.
You're a complainer, aren't you? Oh, it's not normal to bring ashes. You said you brought the person themselves, but what can you do with those ashes?
She said that with a laugh. Twice my brother, who'd been sitting quietly until now, seemed to be getting angry and tried to stand up. And next moment, a loud voice echoed throughout the store.
Bring me the guy who deceived me right now.
That was a man in his late 20s who looked a bit rough. As soon as he entered the store, he started yelling at the receptionist. He looked around and didn't listen to the receptionist trying to stop him and headed our way. Could it be?
As I thought, the man came close to our table and glared at the female staff, asking, "How much longer will it take for you to finish with these customers?"
She turned pale and didn't say a word.
I was a little curious, so I said, "We just want to cancel our contract, but it's not progressing very well. However, if it's just a conversation, please go ahead." And to my surprise, the man looked apologetic and declined my offer.
But for some reason, my brother picked up his belongings and moved to the waiting sofa just behind us. When I looked at my brother's face, he seemed to be enjoying himself. I followed my brother's lead and caught the eye of a male customer. He nodded slightly and stood in front of a female staff. As I wondered what was about to happen, the male customer began speaking harshly to the saleswoman. The other salespeople were busy with customers, and the greeter seemed to be new and flustered, so nobody stepped in to stop the man. From what I could hear, he had signed a new contract a week ago and was angry because the content of the contract was different from what he had discussed, and he had been given many options with his consent. I'd heard that such misunderstandings were common at our store's cell phone department, so at first I thought the male customer might be mistaken. But then the saleswoman said something outrageous.
That kind of minimum fee plan doesn't help my performance. Since you signed the contract, can you stop complaining?
I then remembered something. At our store, we have seen similar complaints, but to prepare for such trouble, we properly write down the contract details and hand them to the customers. Even if there's a complaint that serves as evidence, and after explaining to the customer again, they usually calm down and accept that they misunderstood. But I don't know if it's just this store or this saleswoman. But there seemed to be no such measures in place, and it seems that the saleswoman ignored the customer's wishes and acted on her own. Of course, he had every right to be angry. Except, I was already surprised enough, but then the saleswoman suddenly got up as if remembering something. As we were taken aback, she quickly returned. She had a driver's license in her hand.
I forgot to return this the other day. I'll give this back to you, so please just leave.
It appeared to be the male customer's driver's license. The man was furious again at her unapologetic attitude.
I was searching everywhere for it, thinking I had lost it somewhere. You should have contacted me when you realized. What's wrong with you?
Is this staff insane? The store manager, who had just finished seeing off other customers, rushed over. He apologized profusely, but of course, it was not a problem that could be forgiven with an apology. The manager took the saleswoman to the back for a moment.
Then the male customer apologized to me, and as we engaged in a light conversation, he said, "You seem to know a lot. Are you a cell phone person?"
I told him that I was a salesperson at an electronics store, and the male customer seemed satisfied with that answer. At first, I thought he looked tough and scary, but after talking to him, he was surprisingly normal and even apologized for surprising me earlier. My brother, hearing this, said to the man, "No, I'm sorry my sister scared you," to which I glared at my brother, and the male customer burst out laughing. After a while, only the manager returned and apologized again. I told the male customer that they would like to verify the facts and take appropriate action after contacting him later. The male customer sighed, nodded to us, and left. We asked the manager to process our cancellation, and it was done in just a few minutes. What was all that time for? We also sighed and left the store. Later, we received a customer service survey from the cell phone company, so we gave the lowest rating and wrote everything that happened in the free comment section. I thought it was a small act of revenge, but when I later talked to the person in charge of mobile phones, they told me that it was uncommon to receive such a low rating and the staff would probably get a serious reprimand. Knowing that, my mood brightened a bit. About 2 weeks later, while I was working, facing EDS Teeples, I was approached for product information, and to my surprise, it was the male customer from that day. He recognized me too and told me what happened afterward. The manager had contacted him, and the female staff had been let go, and he was offered a refund and a few months of free basic charges. It seemed like compensation for the inconvenience. Since then, that man would occasionally visit the store, and we would chat whenever we met. After some time, he told me that he saw the female staff in front of the mobile phone shop. She was apparently begging the manager outside the store, saying she couldn't make a living without a job, that she had been kicked out of her apartment, and pleading to be hired again, but his manager firmly rejected her. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard this. Later on, I happened to run into him near my parents' house, and we exchanged greetings. We laughed about the strange connection and exchanged contact information. Then, to my surprise, he asked me out, and I accepted. Thanks to that, both my work and private life have become fulfilling. Having a baby at your age would mean you'd give birth to a dumb kid. I don't have time for that. I like a divorce. That's what my husband said after finding out that I was pregnant. To him, a wife and a child were just assets to his life. If the asset didn't suit him, he'd move on to the next. We were replaceable. Had 30 years passed, and he was stunned to discover how my daughter turned out.
Oh, this is your daughter.
My name is Harriet O'Neill. I'm no one special, just an average person with an average life. Born to average parents. I went to school and got a job. I had excellent grades and got accepted to a prestigious university in my town with a full-ride scholarship. I was so grateful. At the time, the economy was rough, and I was grateful to have landed a job at a huge company. I knew I had to work hard. Before I knew it, I turned 30. I was worried I was running out of time to find a husband or a potential life partner.
Sure, light on this. I'm in love with you. Let's make this official.
Thomas, then 26, declared. I asked him if he was sure he wanted to be with someone older than him.
Alright, you sweet. You're amazing at your job. You are the perfect one.
He always knew just what to say. Eventually, a year later, I turned 31, and we got married. We always knew we wanted to have kids one day, so I changed jobs to start planning to have a child. However, a year passed, and then 3 years passed, then 5. We still hadn't fallen pregnant. We decided to give up on trying and get used to the idea of living life as a childless couple. Then I turned 41, and my doctor had some shocking news. You're pregnant? I had been waiting to hear those words for over 10 years. I went to tell Thomas the exciting, shocking news.
Yeah. You're pregnant. Right now.
He didn't sound too happy. Weren't you excited?
Oh, I'm not excited. You're 41.
Thomas shook his head.
Oh, oh wait, I mean a 41-year-old woman who just so happens to be my wife falls pregnant. So this is gonna ruin me.
He kept going.
Having a baby at your age would probably result in a dumb child, right? Oh, there's a high chance they might have some kind of disability. I can't raise a failure.
Well, and having this baby?
Oh, and then we're getting a divorce.
I couldn't believe what he said. I didn't want to, but he was serious. The next day, he had the papers ready to go. So, I made my decision too. Alright, I'll get a divorce. I knew I was going to have my baby. While signing the papers.
You know, I only married you because of your degree. I thought that marrying a smart, capable woman would guarantee a smooth, married life. I never imagined you'd turn out to be this dumb.
Thomas had an impressive education himself and thought marrying a smart woman would help maintain his image. We were married for 10 years, and I never realized that this was the truth.
No questions asked. You'll have custody. I'm not paying for child support, and I don't want to need it. I don't ever want to be associated with you or that child. If I had known it was going to be like this, I would have never bothered with you.
My child doesn't need a toxic father in their life, So I was grateful he said those things, because I didn't want a dime from him anyway. I wasn't going to argue with that. After we divorced, I moved back into my parents' home and gave birth, surrounded by my loving friends and family. I named my lovely baby girl Nancy. But unlike Thomas's prediction, she was born full-term, healthy, stable, and fully developed. Her body is strong, like an athlete's. She's even better at sports than I was. But most importantly, she has a beautiful heart. Such a heart that I was not expecting. Facing this life with Nancy wasn't going to be so bad after all, and I was glad Thomas and I didn't work out. And before I knew it, the thought of his existence was long forgotten, and 30 years went by. Harriet?
I'm Matt A. Thomas.
We bumped into each other unexpectedly at a well-known hospital in the area. I was in the hospital gown, and Thomas was walking in as a visitor.
Oh, you're an inpatient, huh? Sav.
I may not know how sick you are, but with that baby you decided to have and your own issues. I know those medical bills are ridiculous.
Excuse me.
You had that baby, right? You were too old to carry and deliver a child. I know that child didn't develop correctly. Your baby's cost of treatments on top of yours. Aches.
He was quick to belittle me and jump to conclusions. He's still the same after 30 years. Actually, he's gotten worse, as if that was even possible. After you, I remarried as soon as I could. She's 20, but real mature and beautiful. She's got a great body and face on her. I had a son with her, and people assume he's an aspiring male model because of his good genetics. I didn't ask nor care, but he was bragging about his life.
Oh yeah. There was only a manager when I met you, but now I work for, corporate.
Well, that sounds great for you.
Oh, if I never left you, I would have been stuck with the misery of you and that baby.
I was baffled. I know it's his ego, but seriously? I know better than to stoop down to his level. And better than that, I heard someone coming over, hopefully to try and save me from this conversation. Man, what are you doing? Is your exam over? As a young woman doctor in a white coat appeared before us. I stopped myself. How was I supposed to introduce him? Thomas never existed in our lives, and his name was never brought up, and I never mentioned him to her. Nancy stood there, glaring at him, and said, "I could hear what you were talking about from all the way over there. I could put together that he's my biological father. I just never expected it to be you, Thomas."
Hey, you said it. Dancer, you know him?
Not personally. I never met him, but he's quite the talk around the hospital. His son is hospitalized with diabetes, but he and his wife don't listen to the doctors and sneak in food. His wife causes a lot of trouble about it.
Nancy was working her residency as a doctor at this hospital. But despite how young she was well admired and respected in the medical field and community. What Thomas was saying about his son was clearly a lie. His face was stiff and as white as a ghost. I thought he was an aspiring male model. Oh, he just loves his food. He's a growing boy. He's fine.
Please throw away whatever's in that bag of yours. I know it's filled with snacks and sodas. Well, Thomas, if you continue to do this, we'll have to take action on behalf of the hospital. So, you're my daughter, right? And you're a doctor, so you're my daughter, right? You're a doctor, so fix my son.
I am not your daughter, and you don't get to call me that. You're a stranger, no father of mine. You're just the father of a patient, nothing more, nothing less.
She immediately shot him down.
That's whatever. You let that doctor head of yours get to your ego, acting all superior and better than me.
Excuse me.
Who cares that you're a doctor? Besides, you peas, you're useless. I work as the head of a multi-million-dollar corporation.
He was trying to compete with her. He wanted to establish his authority over her and put her in her place. The typical thing for Thomas to do.
Regardless, your mother's an old wrinkled hag who needs to be hospitalized and will be alone for the rest of her life. So, you have nothing on me. As you're a loser. You lost.
Thomas laughed loudly. He got some things wrong though, so I wanted to correct him.
Oh, Thomas, I'm wearing a gown because I'm here for a checkup, not because I'm an inpatient. That I came for an exam because the hospital director recommended it, who also happens to be my husband.
Director?
Thomas shrieked in disbelief. Yes, my husband is the director of this hospital. After the divorce, I found a new job so that I could afford to raise Nancy. I met my husband at this job. It was a medical supply company. He was a doctor there at the time, and we got married. He loved Nancy the moment he met her. Nancy quickly grew attached and wanted to become a doctor just like him. So she fulfilled her dream and now works here with him.
Your daughter is a doctor, and your husband is the hospital director. Oh wait, how are you living a better life than me?
His ego was shot, and he lowered his head, grumbling at himself.
Mom, let's go.
Okay, but just leave him.
Thomas stood there frozen, watching his daughter walk away and abandon him. Then, one day, Thomas's wife caused a scene at the hospital. The doctor demanded, once again, stop bringing outside food and drinks into the hospital. Instead of being respectful, she was immediately defensive. She started to become physical with the nurse and was forced to be escorted out. They were denied care and were banned from the hospital. Other hospitals were able to take them in, and they were forced to provide him with home care instead. His diet stayed the same, however, his condition worsened. I have no idea what Thomas was thinking because he came looking and begging for Nancy's help afterwards.
Please do something.
Why should I have to do something for someone I don't even know?
I'm your father. And...
My father is the hospital director. What are you talking about?
You rejected me before I was even born, and now you're saying you're my father? You should be ashamed of yourself. Nancy ignored him, and she didn't think twice about it. Thomas's finances were dwindling due to his son's medical bills. His wife spent their money splurging on herself, and she wasn't helping. At this point, the rest of his life wasn't looking too good. It was proven to be true because Thomas eventually found his way to our house to try and negotiate with my husband. But my husband cut him off and threatened him. If you don't leave right now, I will call the police. He marched away and left, his car speeding off the property. I received my results of the exam I had at the hospital, and everything looked good. I was worried because of my age, but thanks to my husband, a caring hospital director, and my daughter, a brilliant doctor, I was in good hands. It's because of them that I know I will always be happy and healthy. Life is unpredictable, but I want to live a life without regrets. And as for me, the decision I made that day is one that I will never regret.